When I got out of the hospital, I went into depression because it was so beautiful there. Did nobody understand why I kept saying I wanted to stay there? You know I had left here. I dropped this body and I was back home. Then, you have to come back here, and I was just upset that I couldn't stay. There's no words for a lot of it, especially the love. I can't tell you how that love really is. It goes beyond human words. Everything is about love. But when I came back, I was different, and I didn't think like everybody else did anymore. I knew I was here to tell my story. That's my job now. My name is Bryan Jordan, and I'm from Slido, Louisiana. My dad had an 18-wheeler. He owned his own truck. He was mostly a gravel hauler, so most of the time, we grew up helping him. We were changing those tires at about 8 or 9 years old. We would do all the flats when he got home. By the time I was 13, I was driving it, and by 15, I was on the highway with it. At 15 years old, pulling 8,000 lb. My brother and I were pretty much men before we were boys. I was never out partying, you know, that tight with my friends because, man, we were busy. Graduating high school, I was too young back then. You had to be 21 years old to have a CDL, so I went into the army at 19. I went to Germany, airborne school, in Fort Benning. I was there for 3 years, and my last year was in Korea. After 6 years, I got out on an honorable discharge, and I got a job with my dad because he was working for this company, and that's how I started with heavy equipment. Once I picked it up, that's all I ever wanted to do from then on, pushing out all that dirt or digging whatever. It's just the power of it all that I love. I didn't have much of an outside life. You would work 3 weeks straight, 21 days, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So all I know is work. I was in Pratt, Kansas, and we were building a wind farm. You know, the giant blades. I got up one morning and I went to work. It was a Saturday, and we were supposed to get off early that day. I was pushing with my bulldozer. I stopped at noon, and I normally would keep some bread in there with peanut butter and jelly, a quick sandwich. I ate a sandwich and got back to work at about 10 after 12. That's when I felt the pressure. I felt pressure in my neck and it was freaking me out. I'm like, well, what is this? I figured it would go away, so I kept working, but it wouldn't stop. So I stopped the bulldozer and climbed down off of it. The pain started going into my chest. I went to my water truck driver and had him take me to my medic. By the time I got to the office, I walked in and said, "Hey, I need some Tums." The reason I said that is because the pain I had was similar to what happened to me like a year before. I was working in North Dakota actually, and I was on the phone with my girlfriend. As she was talking, it felt like a horse kicked me in my chest. I told her, "Hey, my chest hurts," and she knew I don't complain about stuff like that. She knew it was serious, so she said, "Call 911 right now," and hung up. I checked my pulse in my neck, and my heart was beating in a way I couldn't believe. It was all over the place. When I got to the hospital, they told me that it was heartburn. So here we are again a year later, and I'm telling her, "Hey, this happened to me before, so I just need some Tums." She gave me aspirin and Tums, and then made me sit down. As I was sitting there, my arm started hurting, and that's when I knew, okay, this is getting serious. As I sat there, I started getting sleepy, and then I felt myself passing out. As I was falling to the floor, the safety guy was sitting right across from me, just like me or you, right now. The last thing I thought was, I hope he catches me, before I could picture myself going face first into the floor, and everything went black, and I was in the stars. And so I said to myself, okay, I remember falling out of that chair, so I thought I must be passed out or I must be asleep. I'm figuring that I'm having one of these weird dreams because I didn't know what I was looking at. I went to this cave-like place. It was huge, and the walls came down. As the walls came down, they should have come down to a floor, right? But where they stopped, where a floor should have been, there was no floor. So it was like looking down into the night sky when we normally look up. So I was looking down, not realizing that I was floating. Where the floor should have been, there was a walkway made of square stones side by side. I looked to the right, and the walkway went down and to the right and disappeared. I looked to the left to see where it was going that way, and it went into the wall, maybe like 100 feet away. There was a door in the wall, and that door looked like the old castle doors with the curve at the top. When you say cave, most people think, oh, were you in hell or something? You know, but I had no fear there. No fear. I never feared anything. When I looked in the doorway, there was somebody in the doorway. I looked and I thought, wow, I can see through him, like a ghost. I could see right through him and he was just looking at me. So we were just looking at each other. You know, when you see something like that, you would naturally get afraid. But I was like the cat. I was inquisitive. I said to myself, I want to go see what that is. As soon as it came out of my mouth or my thoughts, I took off like a bullet. I was moving so fast that the sides were blurred. I was going so fast. When I got to the wall, that's when I was like, oh my God, oh my God. I said, humans don't move like that. How did I just do that? I remembered why I went to the wall. It was to see who was there. So I looked down below. Me, and there he was. But he didn't look up at me. He just floated along the path that I was looking at, the stone. I watched him float all the way until he disappeared. And then, apparently, I went through the door because everything went jet black dark. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And all of a sudden, I saw a light appear. It looked like somebody had a flashlight like they were searching. That light fell on me and it was so bright. If I had hands, I would have reacted by blocking the light with them. And that's when it took me in. Now, the light wasn't so bright because I was inside of it. It was soft. I remember I looked left in front of me, right and then down, and it was just this soft light. After a while, part of what I was facing started turning into fog. Then, the fog started clearing. As I was peering through, I could see a blue sky. That's when I got caught up. It felt like God. It felt like he just grabbed me, and all I felt was this powerful love. It was like getting plugged into electricity, and you can't let go of it. I was just like that, and it was flowing through me. The love was different. It was strong, something you never felt before, ever. Then I saw the words, forgiveness. After that I saw the words, love. And then I saw the words, peace. Once I saw peace. I went back into the light, and I floated out where it opened up. Each step that I took, I started losing Bryan. I never once questioned, hey man, you are in the sky. Whatever was happening, it was like my soul knew what was coming. I never had one bad thought. My mind was crystal clear. It was like the wind was blowing through it. There was not one worry in the world because I felt incredible, and I could do anything I wanted. I knew that. So I floated down out of the sky. I floated to these pine trees that had these needles. As I was floating down, I could see every needle. Not one missed my eyesight. I saw all of them. And as I went down, I saw the tree going into the ground. And that's when I floated backwards. When I floated backwards, it was a drop-off. You know, like the California coast. You've got these big drop-offs down to the water. Well, that's how this was. It was a big drop-off. And when I looked down, man, that was this garden. The flowers were so big. They were as big as your dinner table. They were mesmerizing. They had so much life. You could feel it. It felt like they were looking at me even though they didn't have any eyes. Like everything was on me. And as I was looking at this garden, I could zoom in on each flower that I wanted to see up close while I was looking left, right, up, and all of that. I was just zooming them in, you know, whichever one I wanted to see up close. I was just floating to the right real slow and taking in all this love from these flowers, you know. It was like they were alive. And then the channel changed again. I was in the blue sky, nothing around, no land, no nothing. And then it seemed like the sky, something shifted. Then there were these 4 bright lights. They were straight up and down, spaced, and I was like, okay, They were getting bigger. They were coming towards me. As I was waiting for the lights to come, a lot of small lights started popping up. They just started popping up all around me, and then they were swirling, doing their thing, man. I was like, wow. It looked like there were so many, and they were just all over me. And I felt that that was my family, all my family that had left. So here they were, swirling with these beautiful small lights. And when the big lights got there, they stopped about where you're sitting. All the little lights that were around me started going to the top light like bullets. They were just going to the top, and they started melting together. And next thing, I see a head. As they were filling him in, the next thing I know, I see shoulders, then the elbows. It's like he was holding his hands in front, but you couldn't see because it was light. However, you could see the elbows sticking out. Either it was in front or in the back. So I watched all these lights fill this whole man up. When that finished, I looked up and he lifted his head. I was like, whoa, man. I was freaking out because I was just looking at all this power. Nothing but power. Then he started moving in the sky. He went up and down, across. He was just flying around, and he never stopped looking at me. When he would go up, his head would tilt over. When he would go down, his head would lean back. He never stopped looking at me. Then he came back to me, and then he took off really fast. He left so quickly that there were traces of himself. I watched until each trace disappeared. I opened my eyes, and my medic was on top of me. She was pushing on my chest, and I looked at her and said, "Hey." When I said, "Hey," she looked at me and jumped off, right? She was looking at me. Her eyes were huge. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Your heart stopped." She said, "Bryan, you died." I asked, "How long was I gone?" She said, 4 to 5 minutes. I couldn't believe that. "So you're telling me I'm gone for 4 or 5 minutes?" I said. I was in the stars that length of time. Then I went to the cave, then to the gardens, and into the sky. You're telling me I was only gone for 4 or 5 minutes when it felt like an hour. I just couldn't fathom what she told me. When I looked down, my shirt was cut open. The patches were on my chest, and there was this machine sitting here talking. That's when all reality started coming back. I was like, "Get me off of this floor." They got me up off the floor. My arm was hurting so bad, and I started sweating. And all my friends and bosses, everybody was just against the wall. And here I am sitting there sweating, wanting to go to sleep. And so I looked at them, and they would look away. They didn't want to see. They didn't want to see me like that. And so I heard something about a helicopter. When I heard that, I said, "Oh, no way." I said, "I'm going to be paying for that thing for the rest of my life." So I kind of got a smile out of them, to help them out, because what I saw, I wasn't afraid no more. I'm like, "Man, so y'all sitting here worrying about me?" So I started. I was the one making the jokes. Then the ambulance got there, and they couldn't move me because of the distance. I was 80 miles from any major hospital. And so they put me in the ambulance. Once they hooked me up, I just went to sleep. This time, when I popped out of my body, I was standing next to myself, and I was looking at my face. My eyes were closed, and my head was laid to one side. I was just standing there looking at myself, and I didn't even know what I was looking at. I didn't know that was me. I didn't want to have anything to do with what I was looking at. I considered my body an it. When they revived me the first time, the way I ended that in that mind frame, I went into the second NDE with the same mind frame. And this time, I was facing these flowers, and these flowers were in this big circle. So inside this circle, there were all these different flowers in their own groups, and I knew right when I saw it what it was about. I had no questions about what I was looking at. I tried to make a painting of it. This is what I tried to paint. I tried to make this. This is what I was looking at. So I took that as all of us are different. We have blacks, we have the whites, Chinese. Everybody in that group has their own color. But yet, all of these colors are still in the circle, which makes us one, regardless of what we look like. I automatically knew what that meant when I was looking at it. And I'm like, wow, we all here, but we fight amongst each other, but we're still a part of the circle. There's nobody outside of the circle. From there, I was in space again, and I was looking at a blue planet, and it was so blue, super, super blue. The colors there are 1,000 times more vibrant than the colors you see here, super, super advanced. It just makes you stare at them for nothing. After that, there were flashes of other stuff I saw, so much. But those I can't remember because it was gone so fast. I was seeing so much. So then that's when I popped back in my body in the ambulance. This time when I opened my eyes, the people in the ambulance were all huddled together looking at me, and I was like, what happened? The lady said, oh, we had to shock you. I could hear a helicopter coming. They put me in the helicopter and flew me to Wichita, Kansas. Once we hit the roof, they were ready. You know, they were saying, it's a blockage. Sounds like a blockage. They started rushing me through. I could see the lights going, like you see on TV when they're rushing patients. They got me in there, took all my clothes off, and were prepping me for surgery. I had this guy on my left side working right there, and I had my arms on my sides because I remembered I was freezing cold. When I opened my eyes, my arms were behind my head. So while the guy was working, I said, hey. He replied, yeah, I asked. Wasn't my arms on my side? He said, you didn't feel that? I said, no, feel what? He said, man, when we shocked you, your whole body almost came off the table. I then asked him, am I going to die today? He said, no, I'm watching you not. So they fixed me. The doctor came in and I was sitting up. He looked at me and said, man, you were supposed to be on the ventilator. You just had a massive heart attack. Your heart is mad, really mad. And here you are, just sitting up, talking to me like ain't nothing happening. You're not even supposed to be talking to me right now. So they put me in the ICU, and a nurse comes out with this paperwork. She starts going down the list and looks at me. She said, oh my God. She said, you had a widowmaker heart attack. She said, you only had a 10% chance of surviving that, even in the hospital. I was like, wow, I was supposed to die that day. They kept telling me they were going to put a pacemaker in because I had to wear this vest. That vest would shock me if my heart did anything out of rhythm because I was pushing out 30% or 35% when your heart is supposed to push out 55%. So I wore a vest for 3 months. And I went to the hospital where they did the check on my heart. After they did the test, I was leaving, and a doctor called my phone. He said, you can take that vest off. He said, Bryan, we've been doing tests on this type of heart attack since the 70s. He said, your heart and one other person since the 70s healed all the way. He said, all you have is some scarring on your heart from them shocking you. He said, I'll have your heart beating just like mine. He said, you are a miracle. I'm not afraid to die anymore. I'm not afraid at all. When it happens, it happens. Don't cry over me, that's what I tell them. Don't you cry over me. I tried and prayed to God to get me back here. No, when I got out of the hospital, I went into depression because it was so beautiful there. Nobody understood why I kept saying I wanted to stay there. You know, I left my body and I was back home. Then I had to come back here, and I was just upset that I couldn't stay. There's no words for a lot of it, especially the love. I can't tell you how that love really is. It goes beyond human words. And so, I wanted to find people like me. I started reading the NDE experiences. That's why I spent my first year just studying, or finding them, making friends with people. And I found so many that said the exact same words. Everything is about love. Now there are other people saying the same thing. So I knew I wasn't crazy when I heard that. I knew I was here to tell my story. That's my job now. But when I came back, I was different, and I didn't think like everybody else did anymore. I was raised in a hellfire church. You have to have the Holy Ghost. You better obey the Bible and all this stuff, or you'll never see heaven. That's how we were raised. I died 3 times, and not once did I see hell. And I felt like a god, and I'm just a normal person. I wasn't in nobody's church. I believe in God. You know I love God since I was a child. But I always had questions like, why? Why is this guy so mad? Or, why put us here and then we got to have rules to leave? You know, it made no sense. And so after I came back, I saw things totally different. You know, I don't judge nobody by their religion because I one time believed a certain way that I was taught. So I can't judge you, you know, for believing what you have because you haven't died and seen it. But when I came back, I didn't see people anymore. I saw souls. And that's how I live my life now. I won't look at you as anything but a soul, and I try and help everybody that I can. Most times I don't look for nothing back from it because it's material, you know. Material things, all of that change. It's not important no more, you know, because you're not taking it with you. And so the stuff that I used to worry about, I try not to anymore. Help who you can when you can. That's all God wants. We're here to help each other, you know. And if you can't find a way to do that, I mean, what else is there? Heat.